So that's kind of the big area. The other one that we've talked about a little bit internally, and we aren't really sure exactly how to address it because it's not something that we directly do today, is the increasing move towards mobile devices. I mean, they've been around for a while, but you know, today it seems like everybody has a BlackBerry or an iPod or an iPhone,
Right.
or some other type of smartphone.
Right.
And as those get continuously more and more integrated into business applications, then, you know, what happens if I have my BlackBerry and, you know, I've got all my business emails on it and I leave it sitting in a restaurant tonight? You know, how does that impact the business if maybe, you know, somebody picks it up before it automatically locks, or if I forget to lock it, or whatever the case may be? And that's just my email. You know, it's possible to integrate a whole host of other solutions. Maybe your email archiving is integrated. Maybe maybe some of your sales tools or your financial tools are integrated into your smartphone just because it makes sense for mobile users.
Right.
So I mean, that's going to be an area that you know, as the smartphones become increasingly cheaper and more powerful, then, you know, it's something for businesses to think about. And you know, endpoint security sort of does some of that with, you know, you can say you're not allowed to connect your iPhone at work or something like that. But as you know, GFI bought my BlackBerry for me, and they expect me to use it so that I can be connected when I'm, you know, on the road or away from the office. So as something that the business expects me to do, you know, we've also got to think about, you know, what happens if I happen to lose that, or I happen to you know, misplace it, or whatever the case may be.
We covered a story a little earlier in the show talking about a survey of 15,000 different companies. As far as a security assessment, found that really the most significant threats that companies are looking at is failure to keep their applications they use updated, as well as web servers. Web servers constitute about 60% of known attacks out there, especially SQL injection attacks and cross-branch scripting, I think is what it's called. Those two areas on web servers, and as I said, old and outdated software. Now, I know a lot of people use on Windows Server, they take advantage of Windows software update service. But we also look at a product called LandGuard. Now, the Oval database that LandGuard consults, doesn't that look at and for out-of-date or unpatched applications as part of the discovery process?
It does. It looks at the core operating system itself. So any Microsoft security patches are going to be identified straight away. But then it also looks at a whole host of other things. It looks at various web servers like Apache or Microsoft ISO server, or Microsoft IIS, I should say, and you know, other types of vulnerabilities, even not related to patches, within the registry, within particular settings, and things like that. They can potentially expose a machine to vulnerabilities, and so LandGuard's definitely a great way to stay up to date on those things, because you can schedule scans and just have it run, you know, maybe every night or every week, to keep an eye on your network and let you know what's going on. And then as well, GFI Max, that's our newest product, has a check built in for software update services. So if you're running WSUS and that's your preferred method for patching your network, you can install a GFI Max agent on that particular machine, and then Max will tell you if patches fail to deploy or whatever the case may be, and you can set various thresholds and receive those immediate alerts if something goes wrong with WSUS.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, in a way, we've been talking about multiple tools to solve some of these issues. You know, recently McAfee and I think maybe Symantec both are beginning to announce bounties for hackers and so forth, because our whole way of doing things has been adding more and more defenses to our networks and our systems. And no one product, folks, can do it all. I'm sorry, it's not possible to be great at everything you do. And so it's kind of good to see that the McAfees and these guys are actually looking at turning people over to authorities and offering cash bounties to find hackers and so forth. But until that happens, we've got to deal with the tools we have. And Kevin, that leads me to my last and final question about if we've talked about layered security. Let's talk. If you can define the term layered security, so we have this common understanding, and then just maybe briefly give us some of the benefits, because to somebody like me, I think there's just no way possible that one program is going to possibly take care of my system. So if we can kind of talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, well, the idea of layered security is the idea that you don't just have a single line of defense. That going back to my days in the military, that the entrance to the base was secured probably first and foremost by a fence with barbed wire across the top. But by itself, that's not necessarily enough of a protection, because you still have a road that you have to use to drive in and out. So you have to add another layer there. So we had some actual barricades in place that you had to kind of weave through to get up to the checkpoint. And then as another layer in the process, we had a few security forces guys standing there and checking IDs. And so there was a process to validate that if you wanted to come in, you were somebody that was allowed to come in. And then I guess as a last line of that defense, they also carried M16. So
yeah, that would do it.
If you decided you wanted to just jog on through there without showing your ID, they had a tool in place to stop you from doing that.
Interesting term, tool.
And
okay.
And I mean, one of the areas that I think gets overlooked with layered security is the element of just user training, and I guess social engineering fits into there. That even with all of those protections in place, if the guy standing there checking IDs at the gate decided he was going to be a little bit lax in his checking, or he didn't feel like checking IDs that day, then all of the technology that goes into setting up the fences and the motion detectors on the fences and the guns and the barriers and all of the technology into making it hard to falsify a military ID, all of that goes out the window because of the human element.
Right.
And so we see the same thing in the IT world, that the idea of layered security is that you have your firewall, you have your email antivirus, you have desktop antivirus, you have your web-based scanning, you have all these different things in place to provide as much protection as possible. But at the end of the day, you still have to rely to some extent on your users doing the right thing. So training your users, having written policies in place to let your new users know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, are still really important things.